Welcome to Anchor Moments. I'm Gina LeBenz, and I'm really excited. Today I have my good friend with me, Kitty Chappell.
Yes.
Hi, Kitty.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here.
I am so excited to have you here. Now, Kitty is an award-winning international author. She has written 3 books, Friendship When It's Easy and When It's Not, Good News, which really, I think this is now my favorite one.
I think so.
And I've never even owned a cat before, but it's so cute. I love all the stories in this one, Good News, and the story of her life, of some things that happened to her when she was younger, that she's going to tell us about today, because she has a lot of anchor moments that happened in here. And I said anchor and not anger, but some things happened to her that made her really angry.
I had some anger too.
Yes, there was some anger in here. There was some anger moments, but it brought her closer to God with anchor moments.
Yes.
And Kitty has been speaking for what, 37 years?
37 years.
37 years on many stages, internationally as well as here all over America. And her book has been translated in over 5 languages now, right? Which is so, so awesome. And Kitty's also in another book. Kitty is in my Anchor Moments, Hope, Healing, and Forgiveness book. I even have her picture of her right there in my book. And Kitty is one of the editors of my book. She was a content style editor. She gave me some of the most important advice when writing about forgiveness. And the best piece of advice for anyone out there who's writing a book that she gave me was, be sure you include dialogue. Because if you don't, it's boring. It's like reading somebody's diary. And who wants to read someone's diary? You know, we want to, every time you do dialogue, then you bring people into the story so they can kind of feel like they're part of it.
Right.
And so, anyway, Kitty, and Kitty and we met on a rainy day. I don't even know, how many years ago, Kitty?
I don't know, how old was Alexis? You were selling Girl Scout cookies.
She was still in the green uniform, so maybe 3rd grade. If she was in 3rd grade, and she's 25 years old now.
Yeah.
So it's a lot, we'll just say a lot of years.
And that was an anchor moment.
It was an anchor moment.
Yeah, we didn't know it.
No, we didn't. It was a rainy, cold day. And when we rang her doorbell to sell her Girl Scout cookies, she said that she doesn't really eat a lot of cookies. And then we said, Alexis said, would you like to donate a box to, I think we did it for My Sister's Place Domestic Violence Shelter.
Yes.
And Kitty said, that's one of my favorite nonprofits. Would you ladies like to come in and have some hot cocoa? And Alexis looked up at me and she was like, oh, Mom, please, because it was freezing outside and raining. And we're not supposed to go into people's homes.
And I didn't know that.
It was part of the rules, but I looked at Kitty and I thought,
she looks safe.
She looks pretty safe. I think we'll be okay. And boy, that was the best decision I ever made. Oh, and we have been just wonderful friends ever since.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. And so much friends that she even helped me write my book too and tell my story. But Kitty's story, wow. It is an amazing story. And where she is not just a survivor, she's an overcomer.
And there's a big difference. Everyone has been hurt by somebody.
Right.
And they live to tell the story.
Right.
But not, and they're survivors. They pride themselves on being survivors. And that's good. But if you don't go ahead to become an overcomer, you're really missing out in life. An overcomer not only survives, but they become better instead of bitter. And they do that through forgiveness. And that's the hardest part of the whole song.
That's right. And sometimes there's things that are just so incredibly awful. You can't imagine, how could you possibly forgive that, because it's such a terrible thing.
Right.
But that forgiveness really is for you.
It is, not for the other person.
Yeah. So can you tell us about some of these special anchor moments? And I know your first one, you were telling me about crossroads.
Yes, the first one, I've titled these, there's so many. When I look back, almost everything that has happened has been an anchor moment because I can see God's hand. His fingerprints are all over my life. And the first one that I'm talking about today, I've called Crossroads.
Okay.
The second is Facing Death.
Okay.
And the third is Doing Something I Said I Would Never Do.
Okay.
So Crossroads, I was born the first of 3 children into an abuse environment. And so I assumed the mother role, the protector for my little family. My father was a very violent man. I became the protector. And my mother was only 15 years older than I. So I sort of became mommy to her too. It broke my heart to see the horrible things that my dad did to her. And I knew that if I didn't do something, he was going to kill her, and maybe us too. He was loved and well respected in his community. They had no clue that he was a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And he warned us that if we ever tried to escape or tell anybody, he would kill us all and then plead temporary insanity, sort of bragging that his community would never convict him.
Wow.
Now this was in the 50s, so there were no shelters, no halfway houses, no legal assistance or financial aid for victims. So we were trapped. We couldn't go to relatives because that's the first place he would look.
Oh, and you don't want to put them in danger either.
You're right. They would have been in great danger. So we were trapped. So I cried myself to sleep all the time trying to figure out what I could do. I knew that if we escaped, we had no money. Where would we go? And then one day I read a newspaper article about a teenage boy who had shot and killed his father during an attack upon the mother. And he was acquitted. And so I thought, well, maybe the next time my dad is threatening us with his gun, I could grab it. And then I could shoot him. And then we would all be free. But even if I weren't acquitted and I was sent to prison, at least the others would be free.
Oh, and you would sacrifice yourself for them.
In a heartbeat. I loved them dearly. But the thought, I couldn't even stand the thought of killing a mouse in a mouse trap.
Yeah.
So how could I deliberately shoot my own father? So I cried and cried every night. And then one night I thought, I remembered my loving granny, my maternal grandmother, a devout Christian who believed God could help us with everything in our life. And she often talked about how Jesus and God had helped her throughout her life. And she'd had some bad things that had happened to her. But my dad was an atheist. I wasn't even convinced that God was real. I knew my grandmother was sincere and believed what she said and experienced. But I just wasn't convinced because I thought if God is real, why is he letting my father be so mean to us? Why doesn't he stop him? But I was so desperate one night, I thought, maybe I could try calling out to this God just in case. So I did. And I remember saying, God, if you're really real and you really do care about us the way my granny says that you love everybody, would you please help me? Would you do something? Because this problem is too big and I'm too small.
Yeah.
I can't do anything. And I know that something's terrible is going to happen. And so all of a sudden I started pounding my pillow and I started sobbing, and I thought, he's not real. How can he care? But God is real, and he does care. And he heard my feeble little prayer, and he set into motion the anchor moment that changed my life.
Okay, let's hear it. What did he do?
My mother's youngest brother was a very devout Christian, and he asked me to go to church with him one night. He had never asked me before because he feared that my father wouldn't let me go, and he didn't want to cause any trouble. But for some reason, he asked me this time, and I said, my dad will never let me go to church. And he said, well, I'm going to pray that he will let you, so you just ask him. So with fear and trembling, I asked my father, and I was amazed when he said, yes, I could go. So that night, for the first time, I heard the truth about God, about how he is real, about how much he loved us, that he sent his only son to pay the way on the cross for our access to heaven. And not only that, but to give us power to overcome anything while we lived on the earth. And so, for the first time, there was hope in my heart. I had to do something. I was at a crossroads. And here I had an offer of hope and life. The other would lead to death. So
Right, if you killed your dad.
Yes, and I chose life. I prayed very quietly in my heart, and I asked Jesus to come into my life, to forgive me, to help me, to become the kind of person he wanted me to be. I didn't want to become the kind of person that I had chosen to be. And amazingly, I felt this warm power just invade me. I was stunned, and the heavy burden lifted from my tiny shoulders, and I was freed forever. For the first time in my life, I was free.
Right in that moment.
In that moment.
And you could feel that love.
I did. And it was amazing because that changed the direction of my life forever, completely. And I'm reminded of a quote that I really like by the author, I believe her last name, Karen Lafferty. And she wrote the book, Forgiving God. And in it, she says these words, sometimes God doesn't change our circumstances. He changes us in our circumstances.
Ooh.
Isn't that beautiful?
That is beautiful. That is really beautiful.
I didn't know how the rest of my life would be impacted by that desperate decision that night. And fast forward 4 years, I was barely 18, when another anchor moment occurred. I came home from church one night, and my dad was pistol whipping my mom with the butt of his pistol. And I rushed between him and her to protect her. And all of a sudden, I felt the cold steel muzzle of his gun jam into my head.
Oh dear.
And he said, I'm sick and tired of you interfering, and one of these days I'm going to blow your head off. That was an anchor moment for me, because all of a sudden I hear this voice that says, now's your chance. Why don't you grab the gun and go ahead and shoot him like you planned to do years ago before you became a Miss Goody Two-Shoe Christian. He's not getting any better. He's getting worse. As I was thinking of this, I heard a soft voice that had to have been God whisper into my mind. And I remembered his words in Matthew 10:28, where he said, "Don't fear those who want to kill you. They can kill your body, but can't touch your soul. Rather, fear God, who has the power to destroy both the body and the soul in hell." And then I heard his voice again, speaking his words in Isaiah, when he said, "Don't be afraid, I am with you."
And so you're hearing this,
Yes.
don't be afraid, I'm with you, while your dad's got the gun to your head.
Yes, yes,
While your dad's
It's
got that gun to your head,
yes,
and you're hearing this other voice inside you quoting these scriptures from the Bible.
yes. And it was like,
Wow.
it was like a frozen frame in time. It's like time stood still. And I will remember this as clear as day as long as I live. And then his voice continued in Isaiah. He said, "Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my right righteous hand." And then this other voice sneers and says, "Yeah, right."
Now that other voice, is that your dad?
That was the evil tempter.
Oh, okay.
No, my dad's still waiting for my response.
Oh my goodness. So you're hearing two sets of voices in here.
The tempter and God.
Wow.
And so he said, "Oh yeah, he's really helping you. Your dad's holding a gun to your head. That's helping." And as I'm considering that, which sounded very tempting, I heard this soft voice again from Jeremiah, where God says, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans for good and not evil, plans to give you a future and a hope." And I thought, and I prayed silently. I said, "Lord, I want to believe your promises and trust this moment to you." I felt my dad nudge his gun harder into my head. And I took a breath and I looked at him in the eyes, and very firmly but gently and with respect, I said, "Dad, if that's what you want to do, go ahead and pull the trigger. I can't stop you. I'm ready to die. I'll just go to heaven and be where you can't ever hurt me again. But
Wow.
remember this, one day you will stand before God and give an account for your actions."
And that's what you told your dad.
That's what I told him. For the first time, he saw no fear in my eyes, because there was none. But for the first time, I saw a glimmer of what looked like fear in his, and he lowered the gun and never threatened me that way again.
That is remarkable.
You know what's amazing is I had always been terrified of my father. I did
Yeah.
not fear him at that moment, not even with a gun pressed to my head. I had no fear of death.
And you could hear God inside your
Yes.
head going through scripture.
So he really did keep his promises.
Wow. Now, we have 7 minutes left, and you still have doing what I said I would never do. Can you give us that third part of your story?
Yes, yes. Sadly, my dad did almost murder my mom. He beat her in the head repeatedly with a claw hammer, left her for dead. He was sure that she was dead. But God performed a miracle and she lived. He was captured, brought to trial. He did not get off like he had hoped that he would. He was sentenced to prison, but given the absolute minimum for premeditated attempted murder, which was 3.5 years. And he threatened to get us when he got out. I hated him more than ever.
I remember reading in your book that he lied on the stand, and
Yes.
he said that it was a crime of passion, and the reason that he almost killed her is because he walked in on his wife and daughter and they were prostitutes, and you'd never ever kissed a boy before.
Yeah.
But that was his lie that he told, and they believed him. That's
The jury believed
Oh
him.
my gosh, that's just heartbreaking.
It was absolutely terrible. And so what happened, I vowed I would never forgive him. He was in jail waiting transport to the state prison to start his sentence. And a woman from church asked me one day, she comes up and she says, "Have you forgiven your father?" I was furious that she would even suggest a thing like that. And I said, "My father will never ask my forgiveness for anything, so I don't think I have to worry about it." She says, "That's probably true, but you still need to forgive him." And I said, "He doesn't deserve forgiveness. He deserves to suffer for the rest of his life." And she says, "That's true also, but you still need to forgive him." I was so angry, and I said, "I would like to know who in his right mind would ever expect me to forgive my father after all of the terrible
yeah.
things he has done to us." She was quiet for a second, and she said, "God." That was hitting below the belt, because I loved God dearly. But I couldn't get her words out of my mind. During the next year, I fought those words. I argued with God. I said, "Lord, you know I love you. I'm at church every time the doors open. I sing in the choir. I teach Sunday school. I tithe. What's this big deal about forgiveness? Aren't I doing enough?" But one day I realized that my love for my Heavenly Father was stronger than the hate for my earthly father. And I admitted to him, I said, "I want to please you, God, but I have a problem. I don't want to forgive my father, but I want to. Could you help me change my want tos? Maybe just put a little bit of desire in my heart." And he did that. And one day, I hadn't even been thinking about my father, and all of a sudden, I was overwhelmed with a desire to forgive him. And I did. I started crying. I said, "Dad, I forgive you for everything that you have ever done." And my resentment, the horrible bondage, the chains that I had been in because of my hate and resentment and forgiveness were broken, and I have been free ever since. And I shudder to think what would have happened had I not forgiven him. What would I have been doing these 37 years?
Right. Because that's the thing. He didn't even have to know that you forgave him in your heart, because it wasn't for your dad at all.
That's right.
But it was for you. So you didn't have to carry that
Yes.
every day when you wake up in the morning and everywhere you go, that you were able to release that
Yes.
and just be done with it.
And my family didn't suffer. Other people around us suffer when we harbor hate and resentment. My children weren't taught to hate. They didn't even know all that I had gone through until they read my book.
Wow.
because I didn't spoon feed hate to everybody around me. All of those lives, I was free.
And she really is. She's just such a delight. One of my favorite things to do is, because she does live in the same neighborhood. I've lived in the same neighborhood since 1991, so we've been a long time. And I can go to her house and we'll sit and we'll just have tea and chat. And she's the most loving, kind person ever. But it's because you were able to release all that bitterness, all that hatred, and be able, if you have all that hatred in your heart, it's hard to have joy.
Oh, it's impossible. And not only that, it's an energy leak. I have so much energy. It's amazing.
Yes, she does. A lot of energy. Well, Kitty, thank you so much for telling us your story. And there's more to it. So if you'd like to get the full version, you can get Kitty's book on Amazon or see her speaking. She speaks all around the country. So if you see Kitty Chappell somewhere speaking, you definitely want to come out and visit her. And in our 1 minute left, I always like to end in prayer. Who would you like for us to pray for today? A special cause, or is there a special person?
A special cause, Streetlights USA.
Oh, yes. Streetlight USA helps young women ages 11 through 17 who have been, who were sex trafficked and who've escaped that. And they help give them healing. And you and I even have been there a couple of times together.
Yes, I've spoken to those precious young girls.
And she even gave them each a free book. And we made human trafficking awareness jewelry, black and white jewelry that my Girl Scout troop used to make.
And I still wear that.
Aww.
Yeah.
Well, God, thank you so much for having Kitty to be able to come here safely today and be on my show. And God, please bless all those girls at Streetlight. Please help them to be able to forgive those people who did horrible, horrible things to them. But please help them have the freedom of forgiveness so they can have joy in their lives. And please bless everybody who's watching our show today and help all the prayers that are in their hearts. Please listen to those and help them too.
Yes, dear Father.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Kitty. It was just a delight to have you today.
I loved every minute. Thank you.
Yeah. Have a good day, everybody, and hang on to those anchor moments.
Yes.
The preceding program was brought to you by the Holy Spirit Broadcasting Network, HSBN Television.